Welcome everyone to the MMA Vivisection doubleheader this week for UFC's TUF 26 finale and UFC 218. And sorry everyone, I know we ended up being a bit delayed, but it all ended up being for the best because this TUF 26 card changed a bunch while we were delayed. So
while we were trying to research the original card, the card changed. So I guess it means at least we did not start recording a show talking about the old card.
Yeah. So anyway, if you haven't been paying attention, Nicco Montano is now fighting Roxanne Modafferi in the main event. Sahara Eubanks got hospitalized during her weight cut and was unable to be cleared to fight. So Modafferi gets bumped up to the finale as the title one of the two fighters for the vacant inaugural UFC Women's Flyweight title,
title challengers.
Yeah, one of the two title challengers, and kind of makes the whole TUF 26 season a little pointless because the two fighters that won their way through it and actually created a bunch of momentum for themselves off a show, beat veterans, got good wins, all these things. One of them doesn't end up in the finale. So to crown it, in a normal TUF season, I don't care. I don't care about TUF at all. I mean, in your TUF Brazil seasons where the two guys fighting in the end just happened to be guys that were on the show because everybody else got hurt and had to pull out, it doesn't matter. But when you're actually crowning a champion off of it, not getting the two people who actually got the wins all the way through kind of sucks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody's happy for Modafferi because she's a really nice person and a really, fun personality. But it is it kind of makes the whole thing feel a little moot. On that note as well, Lauren Murphy, who was supposed to fight Priscilla Cachoeira, Cachoeira got pulled from that card due to visa issues at the last minute. And Murphy has stepped in, apparently, to fight Barb Honchak. She was on standby to fill in just in case something like this happened. And so Murphy versus Honchak will be up on the main card in place of Modafferi versus Honchak. On that note, we're going to dive right into the bottom of this and try to get through this TUF 26 card in a hurry because it's not that interesting, and we got a ton to talk about on UFC 218.
We have UFC 218 to talk about.
Yeah. So let's dive into the bottom. Gillian Robertson, Emily Whitmire.
Not a ton to say about this one, to be quite honest. I mean, Gillian Robertson had her. See, I'm going to have to reference the brackets to remember who fought who.
Barb Honchak.
Gillian Robertson just did not get anything done in her fight with Barb Honchak. She had some moments, but really it looked like a lot of inexperience, honestly. It looked like a very experienced athletic fighter versus a very inexperienced athletic fighter. And I tend to agree with you, Zane. I think that she just doesn't really have a developed game. She's 22. Yeah. She has a lot of time to continue growing, but not really knowing much about her training situation or where her game is headed or what her game really is just yet. I am going to take the fighter who has a style in Emily Whitmire, but because she likes to grapple and she knows she likes to grapple. And I still get the impression that Gillian Robertson is kind of going to be willing to do whatever her opponent wants to do. So I'm taking Whitmire.
Yeah, Robertson kind of looks like she has a general idea of MMA techniques and is trying to mix them all together and just doesn't have very many techniques to go to. So when somebody starts doing anything more than the basics she knows, she's lost pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And Whitmire is just going to charge out and look for takedowns, and that'll probably be enough to get her a win here. Whitmire's had a fair bit of success doing that over her career already. So there aren't many odds on this, so no odds fact for anything other than the established pre-TUF finale bouts. So we will pick those up as we go. That brings us to a women's flyweight bout. Ariel Beck, Shana Dobson. as far as I can tell, Dobson looks a bit like Gillian Robertson, a reasonable athlete who's somewhat inexperienced, but has like some of the core tools it takes to evolve a fighting game. Ariel Beck looks like that, but without the athlete part. So I'm going to take Shana Dobson there.
Yeah, Beck she's got something. I mean, she can be fairly accurate with her punches. She places she's got a nice hook. She can place that left hand pretty well. She seems to have some pop. I think Beck had a fight with Ostovich earlier in her career and lost a split decision, but knocked Ostovich down a couple times with shots, had her staggered at a few moments. She just doesn't have a ground game. And so she is basically going to have no choice really but to strike with Shana Dobson, who is like a less polished but substantially more athletic version of her. So I don't think Beck is out of this fight at all, but
no.
Dobson certainly has a sort of speed and power and timing that I don't think Beck does. Plus, Beck, like quite a few fighters in this card, she consistently puts herself into bad positions by just getting way over aggressive. So even though she can land a couple of nice sharp shots, almost always when she lands her first good shot of the fight, she's going to rush in with like 6 more and just get instantly taken down or get her back taken or get hit with a big counter. So I just don't think she's quite controlled enough, nor is she athletic enough to hang with Dobson.
Yeah, it should be noted that every fighter she's beaten, or the only fighters she's ever knocked out, are fighters who had never fought before. And I mean, Dobson's no better. She's she's 2-1, and Beck's 4-4. But Beck seems much more like the kind of fighter that just ends up in a really close scrap with anyone of any kind of athletic talent. And Dobson, like I say, she looks more like a developing athlete who has some good foot speed and good hand speed to work with. That brings us to a women's flyweight bout: Terrion Gavorjian versus Rachel Ostovich-Berdon.
This one,
oh, he's gone for a second. He'll be right back. Okay, maybe he won't be right back. Hopefully Connor will be right back. In the meantime, Gavorjian missed weight by like 5 pounds. Apparently her flight from Moscow was delayed, and she took an Uber from Los Angeles to Las Vegas to make it at the last minute. So that's why her weight cut was blown. Just a little background.
Respect for the long Uber drive, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta have some respect for that. Ostovich actually showed some nice improvement over the course of the show. Obviously, for like her look and her costumes, she was one of the people that people were interested in.
Somebody people know.
Yeah, God forbid you ever check an Ultimate Fighter YouTube channel comment section when there's a fighter like Rachel Ostovich being featured in the video. But that's kind of, I think, why she came into this with a little bit of hype. She's a solid fighter. Her grappling is pretty well-rounded. Not a bad takedown artist either. But her striking actually showed some nice improvement on the show. And I think that's the kind of thing I'm looking for from a lot of these fighters. We have so many inexperienced fighters here on this roster that the fact that Ostovich is sort of building a game that leads to her ground game control and not just wildly pursuing everything with like the excitement of a novice, I'm going to take Ostovich over Gavorjian. Yeah,
Gavorjian just bull rushes people and tries to make a fight a mess and hopes that her athleticism overwhelms people. And Ostovich can be a little overwhelmed. She, I don't know if it's that she's not, I don't know. I think it seems like she has a little bit of tentativeness about her athleticism, like about engaging in a hard fight. Like if she gets to be like pretty from the outside and kind of pick people off and pick her techniques, then you see a lot of stuff that looks good. And then if somebody goes after her, she has fallen apart a bit in the past. So it's something to worry about against somebody like Terrion Gavorjian. But Gavorjian looks so unstructured, and especially unstructured as a grappler and wrestler. and somebody who is going to fly right into takedowns and grappling exchanges, that I think she's actually just going to give Ostovich a more comfortable fight because of that. So I'll take Ostovich as well, probably by submission. That brings us to a middleweight bout, one of a couple of highlight middleweight bouts that should have you deeply excited.
This is an extremely middleweight bout.
Andrew Sanchez versus Ryan James. And this is I feel like a lot of Andrew Sanchez fights are going to be how much is Andrew Sanchez paying attention fights. Because the big knock I've always had on Sanchez coming up, and, you know, that bit him hard in his Anthony Smith fight, is that he doesn't really seem to pay attention to his opponent or himself as he fights. Like, he has, like, this plan of, like, okay, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to be relaxed, I'm going to throw power strikes and throw what I want whenever I want. And he doesn't really seem to care that much about what's coming back at him. And he doesn't really seem to, or what his opponent's going to do. And he doesn't really seem to care much about how tired he might be. So he's willing to just, like, expend energy. And then he's just like, well, I'll just keep throwing big energy-consuming strikes all fight. Never mind the fact that I'm really tired and can barely keep my hands up to block anything coming back at me. It's led to some kind of ugly fights, like even though he was tuning up Trevor Smith, it led to some ugliness late in that fight. And it led to him getting knocked out by Anthony Smith, where, like, he had a great first round, and then he just kind of kept winging stuff and not paying attention. Like, he kind of got relaxed on the ground and let himself get swept by Smith, and then started getting tired. Thing is, James can't really do anything to turn this fight other than be there. So it's really just a question of, does Andrew Sanchez burn himself to the point, landing on Ryan James, that he then gets too tired and, like, walks into something? But I don't think that, like, James just doesn't even have any of the dynamicism to walk you into something. It's just he's going to keep stalking forward and keep throwing stuff. So as long as you can avoid anything reasonably and land your own shots, then you'll win. I think Sanchez can do that. So I'm picking him here.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of phrasing it. And I think you may have, like, hit the nail on the head. Like, Andrew Sanchez just seems to sort of not really pay attention at times. He just sort of loses focus of what he's supposed to be doing at any given moment in the fight, and then just gets caught. He's obviously a fighter with, you know, is he still relatively young? How old is Sanchez?
I don't think he's that young. He's 29. So, no.
So, yeah, he's obviously still a fighter with talent, but yeah, he doesn't necessarily seem to have the mindset of, like, an elite contender at this moment. Like, he just kind of, but against Ryan James, like, yeah, the question there is really that the only way for Andrew Sanchez to really screw this up, I won't say the only way. Ryan James could put some kind of pace on him that could give Andrew Sanchez trouble.
He could put a pace on him, or he could catch him off his back with, like, a random, you know, arm bar or something.
Yeah. The problem is that Ryan James can't do anything without getting hit in return. He just can't. And we saw last week, I was worried about that with Shamil Abdurakhimov against Chase Sherman. I have similar fears about Ryan James against basically every opponent because his chin is just such an available target. Fortunately for him, Sanchez is not like a monster puncher, but he will certainly commit to big wild shots. He'll certainly find an opportunity to land, and he can certainly turn those into takedowns and use his physical strength to overpower James. The question is really, the James's chance is going to come if Sanchez either gasses himself out or just kind of gets bored of the fight by the third round, at which point James will still be there. He'll still be feeling relatively in shape, and he will still be looking to push the same pace. So Sanchez has to be careful, but it looks like a fight that's kind of made for him to win.
Yeah. Like I say, so many fights for Sanchez at middleweight are just going to be like, how much are you paying attention? How concentrated are you?
Yeah.
Because you should win if you're concentrating.
Which is a question that maybe you would be okay with asking for like some insanely gifted elite fighter, and you're like, man, he can win fights, but Andrew Sanchez is not a fighter who can just win any fight without really paying attention. Like he needs to develop that sort of focus of a fighter.
He reminds me actually, honestly, of Will Brooks in that way. Where it's just, except like the UFC Will Brooks. I realize Will Brooks, his reputation was different before the UFC. But in the UFC, it's very much like, how much are you paying attention? How much, do you just walk into Nick Lentz guillotines over and over? Because that's not a good plan.
Yeah, well, it's a plan. Give him that much, Zane.
Odds on this fight, Andrew Sanchez is a prohibitive favorite over Ryan James, opening at minus 475, stayed pretty steady for a while and has fallen down to minus 502. So Ryan James opening at plus 325 and has risen recently up to plus 378. It could be later or a little closer. I mean, just because of Sanchez's performance against.
Yeah, I mean,
Anthony
Sanchez
Smith.
he's not the fighter you kind of want him to be,
Yeah.
He looks like he should be capable of more than he really tends to do in his fights.
But at the same time, I'd be surprised if he lost this fight.
Yeah.
That brings us to a women's flyweight bout, Christina Marks versus Montana de la Rosa, who was Montana Stewart as of the show. So.
Yeah, what happened with the rapid name change? Did she just get married after the show?
I would assume she just got married after the show. Either that or it was Montana Stewart de la Rosa the whole time, and they just screwed up.
Get it right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past them.
Either way.
Christina Marks she's kind of a type of fighter to me. She's 8'8", which says a lot about her experiences right there. She's like a Beck Rawlings type. I don't want to stereotype or broadly categorize people that way, but she just can't say no. She doesn't seem to have any sense of direction in her fights. She just kind of scraps at every single opportunity. You got to admire the gusto of it. But if her opponent wants to, you know what I mean? This is what I always stood out to me about Beck Rawlings fights, is that Beck would, you could just, at any moment that they were at range, like the start of every round, you could say, and fall into the clinch, and it would happen. You didn't even have to really try to time it. It would just happen within the first 5 seconds. Christina Marks has a lot of the same kind of thing, like just this crazy, reckless aggression. You're trying to do these karate kicks and move forward, and instantly you fall into the clinch. And then even if the clinch doesn't really suit you, you're still there. Like you're still just there putting 100% energy. Jessica I does this kind of stuff too. I'm going to go for Montana de la Rosa. I just think she's just a more controlled, thoughtful fighter. Honestly, that's about it. I think she approaches fights with a certain kind of controlled intent. And that's what it takes to beat a fighter like Christina Marks, who kind of just does whatever you want her to do.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it, because there's not a lot of athleticism difference. There's not even necessarily a lot of point for point skill difference here. Montana Stewart de la Rosa, or Montana de la Rosa, she's 7-4 to Christina Marks 8-8, and her win over 7-9 Kathina Lowe is the best win of her career. Her losses have recently been to legit people, Mackenzie Dern and Cynthia Calvillo, but it's still she's basically winning fights based on having an intent and having some reasonably fast hands. Like she has fast. She's a fast striker, even if she's not necessarily an intensely balanced or coordinated one.
Yeah.
But Marks, she'll just kind of fall into anything, and so
they're still going to collide a lot in this fight.
Yeah. So I'm going to take Stewart or De La Rosa as well, for what that's worth. Brings us to a bantamweight bout, the first bout on the main card, Joe Soto versus Brett Johns. And this is a good fight. This is a great fight. Probably, skill for skill, the best fight on this card. And I I'm pushing towards Brett Johns here. I think Joe Soto is going to be an interesting challenge for Johns because Johns has a thing that I'm waiting to see it catch up with him against elite competition, which is that he only works on straight lines.
Mm.
He charges straight at people, and what has made that work for him against lower level competition is that you don't know if he's coming in for a really solid double leg or whether he's coming in with a chopping boxing combination where he's just going to sit down right into the pocket and throw 2 or 3 hard hooks. And so people have to guess. It's like, do I have my hands up and I block the hooks, or do I have them down and try to sprawl out the shot? Because if you miss either, he's going to land the other one with authority.
Yeah.
Soto is a crafty boxer and a crafty grappler. But he's also very willing to let his opponent dictate the pace of the fight. Mm. And he can take over if things start to go south. If he starts to land a good shot or you get tired, he's really, he's got incredibly good cardio. He's really well trained. He can make you pay for your mistakes. But Brett Johns doesn't make a lot of mistakes. And Brett Johns doesn't get tired. And he's incredibly hard to hurt. So if it's going to be Soto letting Johns dictate his pressure, dictate the pace of the fight, then I just trust Brett Johns to take that kind of bout, take the momentum of that bout and keep it much more than I trust Soto to be able to turn it on a punch or to get out from under Johns and create the kind of grappling scrambles that'll favor him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I pretty much agree across the board. Johns is, to me, like a slightly lesser Alexander Volkanovski. He doesn't have, as you said, he moves in a lot of straight lines. He does not have the same skill in footwork or cutting off the cage. But the essential dynamic is very much the same. The pick your poison fight, and it works because he commits to what he does. He goes in there and he just tries to either take your head off or put you on your ass as hard as possible. And you responding to one, you're going to open yourself up to the other. I just don't see Joe Soto being the kind of fighter who can really cope with that style of matchup. He's a very skilled and experienced fighter. He can counter a lot of what Brett Johns wants to do. Yeah. But the context of those counters is never going to be the kind of context Joe Soto wants to win a fight. If you know what I mean. He can pick his counters, but he's not going to be able to pick his spots. He's going to be being corralled around and reacting a little too much. And if Brett Johns has the initiative, he's the kind of fighter who tends to turn that into a lot of momentum and a win.
Yeah, he just takes over rounds. He is a guaranteed round winner if you're not stopping him.
Yeah, you have to go out there and be decisive and take control of the fight. You cannot just react to unless you stop him, unless you knock him out or submit him. You can't just react to what he's doing and expect to win rounds.
And in the Yaya fight, Joe Soto was getting tagged up until K1 Yaya realized that he didn't have the cardio to be a volume kickboxer and gassed out. Against Chris Beal, he was getting tagged up until Beal is just Chris Beal and just kind of fell to pieces because that's what he does.
Yeah.
And the Beltran fight, he got a heel hook in a minute and a half. There's just not a lot you can take from that. And Johns is not the kind of dude that tends to get submitted or has ever been submitted. So, odds on that fight, Brett Johns.
Joe Soto goes wild for some leg locks and stuff. It could be kind of cool. I mean, I'm excited at the prospects. I just don't see it being the kind of fight Joe Soto really wants.
Yeah. Johns opened at -230, adjusted up and down to -213 or so, and has slowly climbed to -186. Soto opening at plus 170, adjusted up and down to about there, and has slowly slid down to plus 155. Soto has, especially with his submission skills, he's a better class of grappler than what Johns has faced in the past, frankly. So there's a real chance that Soto could just be something that Johns isn't ready for on the ground. But otherwise, I would say I like Johns a lot in this fight.
Kind of still waiting for that matchup in which I don't heavily favor Brett Johns over his opponent, to be honest. He's that kind of fighter.
Yeah, it'll be somebody who can just shut his wrestling down and then make him pay for only stepping in straight. You know?
Somebody with good elbows, maybe.
Yeah. That brings us to a women's flyweight bout, Deanna Bennett versus Melinda Fabian.
One of the better fights on the card, I think, in terms of style matchup. Deanna Bennett, a fairly fun striker to watch. I think she was largely getting the better of Sijara Eubanks in their fight with her hands before sort of, by my read, getting lulled into the idea of a boxing fight and then getting kicked in the head, which happens quite often in MMA. You think you're boxing with somebody, you get kicked in the face, and if you don't see that coming, that's exactly the kind of thing that knocks you out. Melinda Fabian, a little more Muay Thai stylistically. She's got some nice knees in the clinch. Honestly, I just think that Deanna Bennett's experience is going to come in handy for her here against Fabian. Even though I like the look of what Fabian brings to the cage, I think she has some potential. I think Bennett is just a little more seasoned, and I'm going to take her for that reason.
Yeah, Fabian's an interesting fighter in that she looks like she looks like a really solid, put together skill fighter, and then you actually just sit and wait for her to throw a strike, and you realize that nothing's coming, and then you look at her record and you realize that she's only beat women on the Hungarian regional scene only, and lost every other fight to anyone else. And, you know, against somebody like Bennett, who's been around for a little while now and who trains out of a big camp and has scrapped with some good fighters, I don't see a lot of chances for Fabian to take this unless she gets a camp that really gets her some confidence and faith in her skills in the cage.
Yeah, you're right though. Like, she does look like a put together fighter. That's why I look at her in this fight and I'm like she's a kind of fighter who could come out and surprise people by being competitive, but she just doesn't. It's not natural. It's not second nature just yet.
Her stance and her movement are great.
Yeah,
her actual fighting is not like, it just doesn't happen.
It's rarely actually happening. That's all.
She just needs a good camp. Like, she needs somebody to take the basics she's learned and turn it into actual competitive hard sparring.
Yeah.
All right, that brings us to a middleweight bout, Eric Spicely, Gerald Meerschaert. And man, this fight, I am excited for this.
I like how they're doing with like Eric Spicely what they would normally do with some unexpectedly interesting striker who clearly can't grapple. Like, just fight other strikers. And I've never noticed them doing it so strongly before now, but Eric Spicely can only grapple, and now he only fights grapplers in the UFC, and I'm on board for that.
Yeah, I want them to keep that up. This is the battle of funky grapplers who are not great athletes.
Yeah.
And Connor, we're about to lose Connor. And as such, it's kind of a tough fight to pick because you really have to go, like, who is the better grappler here and who has the athletic edge? Because neither guy, both these guys get in there with better athletes and get controlled. Spicely has that remarkable win over Thiago Santos, but that's also, like, Santos blew his knee out in that fight, and very clearly that was a big reason that he could not handle Spicely going after him. I am gonna lean Gerald Meerschaert because I do think he's just a little bit better of an athlete than Eric Spicely. But both these guys tend to get submitted. That's how they tend to lose. They tend to be grapplers who get submitted by guys that they can't keep up with.
Why do you think that is? You think that's just because they feel so comfortable on the ground, but they just can't athletically keep up with the other submission artists?
I think it's an athleticism thing, and I think it's that they're not actually elite grapplers. They're just very fun, funky grapplers. So
very like they've narrowed down their game so much that maybe it gives us a false impression of how amazingly good they must be at that.
Yeah. And they're aggressive MMA grapplers. And if you're an aggressive, funky grappler in MMA who's not an elite athlete, you're going to get submitted. Like, you are going to leave openings to get a submission on, like Spicely came out against Antonio Carlos Jr. and went immediately for a takedown. And then when Carlos Jr. started going for leg locks, went for leg locks right back with him. Like, he was absolutely down to tangle with him on the mat, and that gets you submitted. That got him submitted. So I'm going to take Mearshart here. I think he's just a little more. I think he's more athletic. That's really all it is. But it's a complete coin flip because I can't actually really tell. Maybe I'm just not good enough. Maybe I'm just not a good enough eye with grappling to tell who the more technical grappler is, because that's probably who's going to win this fight.
Yeah, it's I can't honestly say I can clearly tell who's the better athlete.
Yeah, no.
Even that's a bit of a vague guess, because Mearshart certainly beats the eye test better than Spicer.
He looks in shape.
Yeah, he looks in shape, but he's also like astoundingly slow.
Mm-hmm.
He especially on the feet. I mean, fortunately for both of these guys, their biggest weakness is not going to be easily exploited by the opponent, because Gerald Mearshart does so much risky stuff on the feet where he just kind of leaves his chin hanging out there, moves really slowly. Eric Spicely, the only reason I don't say the same thing about him is that he hardly does anything on the feet. He tends to grapple as soon as possible, like a lot of the Ultimate Fighter fighters on this card.
They put his head down, wing big overhands to get to a body lock, and then work from there.
Yeah, if I can just grab onto you, that is his goal every time he's on the feet and he's not already touching his opponent. Mearshart may actually be able to get some work done with the striking if he can shut down the takedowns. He is slow and vulnerable there, but Spicely is pretty outmatched against just about anybody else in terms of striking, and Mearshart does have some craft with his hands.
He's got a really awkward funk to his stand-up that makes people, like, it really catches them off, because he's tough, he can eat a lot of shots, and then he throws power, like, he only has speed with his hands. So, it's that, like, super slow, weird, awkward guy who only leans back and looks for uppercuts. And people are like, wow, I've landed 4 shots, and they get hit really hard. And they're like, what the hell?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, he's just a little better than Eric Spicely. So that's why I'm picking him. Also, it's always easy to fall back on experience, but it is hard to find a middleweight with more credible experience than Gerald Mearshart. He has been fighting for a long time. He's got, 34 fights under his belt against relatively high-level competition all throughout. And Eric Spicely is this just a trap, Zane? Is this a mental trap? Because it's so hard to believe that Eric Spicely has even won 2 fights in UFC, because he looks so unathletic.
Yeah.
But he's very aggressive.
He's very aggressive and very dedicated to what he does.
But he also just got guillotined by Sam Alvey.
I know.
All right, I'm picking Gerald Mearshart. I can't destroy my brain thinking about this one too much, but I am going to enjoy watching it. I really think it'll be a fun grappling match if these guys go to the ground.
It'll be I think it will, and I think it will go to the ground.
It's hard to imagine it not going to the ground.
Mearshart opened at -190, adjusted up and down, basically right back to -190, and has stayed about there. He's still at -190. Spicely opened at +150, adjusted up and down back to about 150, and is currently at +158. So not much movement on that line at all. I think it could be closer to a coin flip, frankly.
Yeah, but, no, Spicely's in it for sure.
Yeah. All right, that brings us to a women's flyweight bout: Barb Honchak versus Lauren Murphy.
Yeah, Lauren Murphy now, huh? So she was actually in shape for this. Her opponent was
Yeah,
removed.
her opponent ducked out just 2 days ago, visa issues. So she's been through camp. She's been training. She was supposed to be on the card. UFC told her to be ready to fill in. So
The unfortunate thing is that Lauren Murphy has never been phenomenally impressive as a UFC level fighter. She just, like, this seems to be a running theme of this card in particular. She just does not have a lot of athletic ability. She's even to the point of not having a ton of coordination on the feet.
yeah, that's the biggest thing. Is I used to feel like Lauren Murphy was actually like reasonably kind of at least foot fast and strong for a woman bantamweight.
Yeah, she got strength.
But she continues to be completely uncoordinated in a way that means that nothing connects at all.
Yeah, she's got like Matt Riddle striking on a good day, where she just cannot see. She doesn't have a sense of range. She's just constantly kind of flinching and just doesn't have any sort of confidence or coordination on the feet. She's got a lot of heart, and that has helped her in past fights, and it has made many of the fights that she's lost very difficult fights in her opponents because she does just keep pushing. And she's also not the kind of fighter that you can beat just by sticking them in a disadvantageous position, because I recall her fight with Sarah McMahon, and she kind of fucked McMahon's shit up from guard, just elbowing her and short shots. And if you just think you can hold her in a position and stall her out, she's not willing to be stalled. She's going to keep working, but she doesn't have the athletic ability to really improve those positions. And she doesn't have the coordination to do anything really effective on the feet other than get hit in the face. And I think Barb Honchak is just too much of an athletic specimen for Lauren Murphy. Barb is also not like super explosive or quick, but she's strong. And when she does have a secured position, she is also not inactive. She doesn't stall from half guard. She tries to bash away with elbows when she's in the clinch. Barb's had a few recent performances that, I don't know, wasn't quite right. She looked a little aimless. She didn't really look like she had a clear idea of what to do against her opponent at all times. So I could see Lauren Murphy's like volume and pace getting to Barb a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think Barb honestly just has the strength and power to outdo Murphy on the feet and only wind up in good positions on the ground. So I'm going with Barb.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree. Like my big fear really is with Barb is the pace and just her aimlessness, because she's a fighter that she looks like she has a massive athletic advantage over everyone she fights, and then she has 3 career stoppages. And it's not like she's fighting only the best, most amazing athletes in the world, or just like these unbreakable phenoms. She's fighting people that can be stopped, and it's kind of weird that it's just like it never happens for her. Although, to be fair, most of the women that she has fought don't get stopped often. So, even Leslie Smith and Aisling Daly, not being the best athletes out there, don't tend to actually lose by stoppage. But, or Takayo Hashi. But it always feels a little like, well, like, why aren't you getting more done when you have somebody locked down in half guard for a round and a half? And
no, that's exactly the feeling. Like Barb's fight with let me look it up real quick. Barb's recent fight with it might have been that Takayo Hashi fight, actually.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, you can do more here. Like you should be able, I don't know, it felt like she should have been able to take over a little more easily, and for whatever reason, she just wasn't doing much.
It's worth noting that before this tough stretch, that Takayo Hashi fight, that was 2014, and she's 38. So,
God damn, that was that long ago already?
Yeah. It has been 3 years since she fought. Invicta eventually had to strip her for inactivity. They couldn't get a hold of her, apparently. Like, she wasn't returning phone calls and all that. So
Weird.
she should win this fight. She should beat Lauren Murphy. She's a better technical fighter, and she's every bit as much of an athlete, if not, and a more coordinated one by far.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting because, I wasn't that surprised. People were like, oh my God, did you believe Barb Honchak didn't make it to the finals? I'm like, she's 38 and she hasn't fought for years, and no, I'm just not. Like, she's just not. She even at her best, she has never been a just overwhelmingly unbeatable, unbreakable fighter. She's always been a little.
Bro, the number 1 and 2 seeds for this show were Roxanne Modafferi and Barb Honchak. Like,
Yeah.
It's not a super strong division. It shouldn't be shocking at all that there are like good unknown fighters out there at this weight.
Yep. Like I say, we have no odds for this stuff just because it didn't get announced until the last minute. Bantamweight bout next. Actually, I'll refresh real quick just to be totally triple sure. Nope, still nothing. Bantamweight bout, co-main event. Seriously, co-main event. I have no idea why. But Sean O'Malley versus Terrion Ware.
What is this whole card?
I know.
That's kind of a weird-ass card.
It really is. Especially considering that they only had 5 fights booked for this whole thing for like months.
Yeah.
And then they only ended up with 10 at the end. Like, not to cast throw any shade or anything, but you got guys like Chris Wade who are out there like throwing a fit online. If you've seen his recent posts about the UFC,
give me a goddamn fight.
Being unable to get booked, and you're only booking 10 fights for this card.
It honestly feels, and I don't necessarily blame them for this, although I'm sure they probably could have handled it better, but it honestly feels like the UFC, despite still running biannual season of The Ultimate Fighter, is just done caring about the show.
It does feel that way, yes.
Like, this is the card they put together to crown a new champion in a new division. They didn't try. Like, you can look at this card and say they didn't try that hard to put together a solid. They were like, well, we've got UFC 218. Nobody cares about TUF anyway. And rather than asking the question, why are we still doing it? They said, let's just make 218 the good card.
Yeah. So, bantamweight bout, co-main event, Sean O'Malley, Terrion Ware. I am really tempted to pick Terrion Ware here. Sean O'Malley, because Terrion Ware is like all fundamentals. We've talked about this. He's stereotypical young veteran. Yeah. Of just a guy who has obviously spent his entire training career sparring bigger dudes in the gym, and just it seems like that's all he does. Unfortunately, I just don't think he beats good athletes. He's just not a good athlete. So being a guy who is willing to just be competitive with better athletes at a high level is not going to win him many fights.
Yeah.
And O'Malley, he can absolutely beat Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley is an unstructured mess of a fighter. Will take 2 to give 1. Will absolutely throw spinning shit with zero idea of, like, zero setup or any consideration. He trains a lot. I think he trains a lot with Alex Caceres, if I'm remembering correctly. And it shows in everything about him.
That does not surprise me. Yeah, Sean O'Malley is a fighter for whom, like, Floyd Mayweather's pull counter is a frequently reoccurring part of his game, even though he doesn't have any other aspect of that defensive game, but he sure does like to hang his string out there and pull counter people. That's how he sat down. What was the guy's name on the Dana White Contender Series?
I don't care. Just he's the dude he fought. Some dude he fought.
Alfred Kashakian.
Okay.
Aren't you glad I looked that up?
We've got a whole nother card to get through, dude.
Okay, you're right.
My point being, O'Malley's a pretty good athlete. He throws hard, and I think that he's gonna, like, Ware will be there to be hit. Ware is not is not unhittable, and I just don't think he has the athletic chops to hang with O'Malley. So I'm picking O'Malley. But if O'Malley can't stop Ware, then Ware could easily just take this fight over and take a decision off him without any trouble.
Yeah, I quite like this matchup. Like, I think it should be a very fun fight to watch. Most of the things that Sean O'Malley does are very fun to watch, even if they are also like insane broken messes some of the time. Terrion Ware's boxing is going to be a problem for Sean O'Malley, especially if Ware manages to back O'Malley up.
Yeah.
If he can stay in his face and counter him whenever O'Malley throws, he is going to find openings. O'Malley was all over the place whenever he got countered by Kashakian in that Dana White Contender Series fight, but he's also much quicker and has, I think, a pretty considerable reach advantage over Ware, and is just a sort of bizarre fighter. And Ware tends to kind of like to get a read in his opponents and watch them a bit. And I think that could lead to him being surprised by some things he just doesn't expect, because O'Malley. Then again, Terrion Ware doesn't get hit clean that easily, and Sean O'Malley tends to get hit clean.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to go with Terrion Ware here, actually. I think he can do it.
I knew you would.
It's a favorite pick because I like him, but I'm going to go for it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sean O'Malley will be an interesting test of how far could Alex Caceres go if he had power.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, and Terrion Ware is going to test that the defensive responsibility of his game a lot. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah. O'Malley is a silly favorite over Ware. Opened at -315, adjusted upwards to about -255 or so, and is now at -259, sliding slowly back, slowly down. And Terrion Ware opening at +235, adjusting down to +200, and is now at +209.
It's a little wide.
It's wide. I mean, O'Malley, the way he fights, he's Alex Caceres. He's the white Alex Caceres. And if you've watched Alex Caceres' UFC career, he should not be highly favored over anyone.
He even has the hair, Zane.
I know.
Alex Caceres. Yeah, the odds should never be that wide with such an untested, unproven, exciting but unproven fighter against a relatively proven fighter that just nobody cares about.
Yeah. That brings us to our title bout, inaugural women's flyweight title bout, Nicco Montano, Roxanne Modafferi.
Well, Roxanne has certainly shown some new wrinkles in recent years. Her striking has come along. Is she still at Extreme Couture?
No, she's been at Syndicate for a while. Syndicate is what has really turned her game around.
That's actually what I meant. Other Vegas. She's still probably the most unathletic person in this entire tournament. She's just not an athlete at all. But you have to admire the fact that she makes that work for her. Something that made me chuckle when I saw one of her fights on this last season of The Ultimate Fighter, she came out pawing with her jab when the round started. She was already pawing. They were like 20 feet apart still. And she was like, I think she knows I don't have other athletes' ability to gauge distance. So I need to be feeling and pawing and touching. That pawing jab has been a big development for her recently, and has made her a lot more respectable on the feet because she knows when she can sit down and throw. I think also being at 125 is pretty handy, not just being flung around. That athleticism is not quite a disadvantage here. But she's probably going to get kicked a lot by Nicco Montano. And I don't think that she really has the sort of explosiveness to shut down that distance if Montano just focuses on keeping her at bay and kicking her in the body over and over. Obviously, Montano's going to have to worry about the takedowns, but she's shown some pretty solid takedown defense on the show. Good instincts to get her back to the fence and then turn her opponent around. Modafferi is an underrated wrestler, but again, not athletic. And she's going to be kicked every single time that she's at long range. I think I'm going to go with Montano. And that's about it.
Yeah, I'm leaning Montano too. I like Modafferi. She's fun. But like I think the biggest thing that has made the huge difference for Modafferi in her career so far is that she has learned actual striking footwork, and then she's fought a ton of women who have no clue what striking footwork looks like. And so suddenly it's like, oh, I can actually like keep my
Cut off
foot
the
on the
cage.
outside of yours, or cut an angle, or any number of things that just nobody else does when they're just sitting there and throwing haymakers at her, and it works for her really well. The problem here is that Montano also is one of the few women who has footwork, and that seemed to be one of the big differences for her on this show as well, is that she actually retreats at an angle when she's striking, and like steps off and throws a punch to an angle, and that confuses just about everyone. And
she, unlike some of the other fighters here, she actually she keeps reserves. She holds something back and then chooses to throw it a couple seconds later.
yeah, and she's also a reasonably good offensive wrestler, which Modafferi is good on top of people, but she's never been great off of her back. She's gotten better at like sweeping and standing up and things like that, but her lack of athleticism, often really comes to bear when she gets taken down, because people can just hold her down and shut down her game. There is a chance that Modafferi, just for her experience and her comfort, will take this, because that's something that Montano does not have, and has one of the reasons she lost her fight to Julia Avila, and in other fights as well, just seems to be her a lot of it seems to be her slow development of footwork, like where she's trying to be this like sniper and having people just sort of wade in on her and having to get comfortable with that and getting that experience. It seems like TUF has kind of been a turning point for that lately. So I'm going to pick that to keep. I'm going to pick that to keep going and pick her to beat Modafferi, just to be a little more athletic, to not get submitted. If Modafferi can't submit her, I don't see her winning the decision. But if Modafferi can get her down, if she can get the takedowns, then she's become a really dangerous top player, like a really solid lockdown top player. So it'll be interesting.
She's also super tough. Like, if you don't knock her unconscious, again, like as somebody who loves journeymen and fighters who get by despite a lot of their limitations rather than because of their talents, you have to love Roxanne Modafferi.
Oh yeah, she's absolutely learned. She's tough, and she's learned to be technical and to trust being technical, and it's winning her fights. I just think in this case, Montano looks like she's also reasonably learning to be technical and is a better athlete.
Yeah, I agree.
And we have no odds on that. So we're just going to skip straight to UFC 218 at this point. And I will kick us off with Amanda Baby Pooper versus Angela Magana, as Angela Magana dubbed her recently, in the all-time worst trash talk line.
That's the fucking best. Are you kidding me? This is my first time hearing it. Amanda Baby Cooper. I love that.
Amanda Baby Pooper was just...
Wait, she called her Amanda Baby Pooper? I was just laughing at baby. I didn't even hear pooper. Boy, that is an amazing piece of trash talk right there. That is Colby Covington could learn a thing or two from the queen.
It blows Cody Garbrandt out of the water.
Amanda, baby pooper. Oh man, I love that so much. I really do.
Anyway, Cooper actually fights, is an okay athlete. She should beat Angela Magana. Cooper, for not, Cooper has been submitted, but by much better athletes in Tatiana Suarez and Aspen Ladd. People like Suarez and Ladd both have crushing top games. So does Cynthia Calvillo. And otherwise, like Cooper's not easy to submit. She fights off a few chokes before, giving up. She's just not a great athlete. But she's not nearly as bad an athlete as Magana is, and Magana's only real hope is sort of a pressure control submission game because she's the clunkiest, most wooden striker on the planet. So,
it was pointed out to us last week when we were being pretty hard on Kylan Curran's UFC record that Magana's is pretty comparable in terms of like not having beaten any of the people that she's fought in the UFC. She's up there with Kylan.
Oh yeah, no, I mean Magana. Everybody's shocked Magana's still in the UFC. And yeah, like there's just I'm picking Cooper, but she could lose this fight. Cooper's she is a wild, aggressive fighter who is neither a power striker nor a great grappler. So she will or a great athlete. So she will open herself up to every opportunity she needs to, that Magana needs to win. But I don't, not picking that to happen.
Yeah, these are not two of the most well-rounded and impressive fighters on the roster. I think Amanda Cooper is a little more athletic. She's got a little more spring to her step. Magana just is constantly putting herself in awful positions. She is the textbook desperately reach for the clinch at every opportunity kind of fighter. I could see that kind of thing working because, Amanda Cooper tends to kind of throw herself around a little bit and get off balance. She's not the most controlled fighter, but she's also like usually she loses because athleticism alone isn't enough for her. And I think it kind of will be against Magana, who for example, when Tisha Torres would step in and throw any kind of punch at Magana, her reaction was to lift her chin up, put both hands out, and sort of squirm away from the punch. She just doesn't have the movements of a very good fighter.
Cooper opened at minus 350, has dropped to minus 480. Magana opened at plus 250, has risen up to plus 360. It's wide. Cooper should never be that huge a favorite, even over Magana, but I get it. Nobody wants to bet on Angela Magana, and everybody wants to see her lose.
They're really just betting on the strength of that new nickname, in my opinion.
That's
why I'm favoring her. I mean, I don't want to say it in my analysis, but that really is why I'm picking her here.
Heavyweight, Justin Willis, Alan Crowder.
Alan Crowder looked solid on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series in the sense that he was like, I'm talking regional level heavyweights here. It doesn't take a lot for me to say that someone's looked solid. He looked well put together. I think he looked like a fighter who had responses to lots of unorthodox positions that were quick and immediate. When he would get bucked off from like a messy takedown attempt and end up in a weird scramble, he would be ready to jump on his guy, hit him from behind, keep the pressure on him. When he was being thrown at, he was defending himself and then countering. I know that's not a very high bar, but he also responded pretty well in wrestling situations. I liked what I saw from him on top on the ground, some decent ground and pound. Justin Willis had a solid performance against Jason Mulheron.
James.
I wouldn't. Oh, sorry. What's the name? James.
James Mulheron. But anyway,
I wouldn't say I was really blown away by any aspect of it. Willis was. I kind of pegged him as. I guess I was impressed with the sort of composure that he showed because I had pegged him before that fight thinking there's a good chance he's going to gas himself, that he's going to try to go way too hard in the first round. He was a lot more composed and controlled. I'm not 100% sure if that's enough against Crowder. Because Crowder, unlike James Mulheron, is not like a tiny little man for the division. He can actually, I think, physically compete with Willis in the clinch. He can compete with him with the striking. His arms aren't like the length of a T-Rex arms. So I think I'm going to go with Crowder here. I do think he's going to be able to force Willis into the kind of fight where he slows down, which is something we've seen from Willis in the past. And Crowder just looked very composed and controlled to me for a relatively low level heavyweight. I think he's realized a little more of his potential so far than Willis has.
I don't know. I just don't think that Crowder has the I don't know. That fight on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series, it was a bad sign to me in that it immediately, his opponent immediately gassed out. Yeah. And then it was it took Crowder another round and a half to figure out how to beat the guy. He doesn't really seem to have any strong tools he can depend on.
Yeah, that's fair. I say well-rounded, but you could just as easily say jack of all trades. Definitely not a master of one.
And Willis is huge and powerful. And if he's fighting deliberately, I think he can be, he's not going to be, he's not, what's his name?
Curtis Blades?
No, not Blades. The other one. The wilder, more powerful punching one. Derek Lewis.
Derek Lewis. Okay.
He's not Derek Lewis in terms of power, but he can have a similar style as just being a patient, huge, big hitter who is just going to
so big and powerful.
Yeah. And I think that alone is going to be enough to get by Crowder, that Crowder's going to try to take him down and not have success and just get stuck trading slow shots and being a little slower, a little worse striker, a little worse defensively, and maybe not get knocked out because Willis doesn't seem to put a pace on anyone, but just hurt all fight.
Can Willis put a pace on anyone? That's my concern.
Yeah.
I still don't know. He fought somebody who could not push a pace on him and did not gas himself out, but I'm still not sold on him as a fighter who can't be gassed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I just don't see it. I don't think Crowder pushes a game. Crowder pushes a game that could gas somebody out, but I don't think Willis is bad enough defensively to get caught in that game.
Fair's fair.
Willis is the favorite, opened at -210, adjusted up and down to -205, dropped to -224, and has gone back up to -215 since then. Crowder opened at +160, adjusted to +175, jumped up to +187, and has dropped back to +173 recently. So a little movement up and down on those lines, and I think they're pretty reasonable as is.
Yeah.
Light heavyweight bout next, Jeremy Kimball, Dominic Reyes. And this is pretty easy to me. Kimball does not look good against good athletes. He's too sort of his style is just sort of very pick you off with little accuracy and speed, hoping to land just the right shot and catch you out. And it works against guys who aren't that athletic enough to close him down faster or hit him harder. But as we saw against Rogerio de Lima or even Chris Camozzi and Perry Filkins, you get somebody who can compete physically with him and he can get beat. And I think that Dominic Reyes is absolutely a powerful physical specimen of a fighter and seems like he can do exactly the kind of same things that Marcos Rogerio de Lima did to him. So I'm picking Dominic Reyes.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that too much. Justin Willis certainly has something. I mean, his style is weird.
Kimball.
My God. Jeremy Kimball definitely has something to his game. He's got some moves. He's I think a thinking fighter. He's definitely cycling through his options and picking his shots. But technically, he leaves something to be desired. He's a little all over the place, a lot of drastic leans and pulls without his hands up and with his chin in the air. And then physically, he's a slightly pudgy light heavyweight who's not a phenomenal athlete. Doesn't seem to hit that hard. I mean, good power definitely shown in that last fight with that like chopping right hand knockout, but typically not much of a power puncher. I'm gonna be getting like these tingles soon about Dominic Reyes whenever I pick him, just thinking like, when is that fight gonna come? When's the one where I find out, like what his problem is?
Yeah.
Who's the guy who's gonna make him look bad when he gets to the second round or whatever? But until we get to that point, and as long as he's fighting guys like Jeremy Kimball, I think it is relatively easy to pick him just because he is not only a very powerful and very aggressive striker, but a more fundamentally technical one than a guy like Jeremy Kimball.
And because I realize people are going to come out of the woodwork and say, oh, well, Kimball has a bunch of KOs, so fuck you guys. He's accurate and he's fast.
Mm-hmm.
And when he fights good fighters and he gets stoppages, they're late because he's accurate and he's fast. He's not that powerful. Against bad fighters, being accurate and fast and like having some volume and all that, it's going to get you, like, you're going to get knockouts if you're hitting people on the chin. But
you need a lot of power to knock out Matt Van Buren.
Yeah.
You need some next level power for that kind of.
Oh, gutter.
For such a task. Yeah, Reyes is just like not only the power and the aggression, but technique seems to be there as well. He also is like setting up and picking his shots, but with terrifying consequences. So I'm taking Reyes first round TKO.
Reyes is a massive favorite here. Opened at minus 405, stayed there, dropped down to minus 469, and is now to minus 478. So sharp drop in the past day or so. And Kimball opening at plus 285, adjusted up to about plus 318, and then rose pretty sharply in the last day to plus 358, now plus 362. Reyes, as you say, there still feels like there's a shoe to drop on Reyes, so it's seeing him that wide in odds makes me nervous. But Kimball's a good opponent for him.
That's how I always feel about like you. There's only so long you can do this kind of thing, making predictions before you realize like I got to corral the hype on this very exciting finisher because the other shoe almost always drops. Or it at least threatens to drop, and we have to see how they deal with it.
Up next, welterweight bout, Abdulrazak Alhassan versus Sabah Homasi.
It's going to be wild. It's probably going to be wild, Zane. Abdulrazak Alhassan only really knows one sort of way to fight, which is to sling bombs at people in the early round. And as we discovered in his fight with Omari Akhmedov, that's really the only thing he knows. After that point, like, he gets tired and it's just sort of like waiting for his power bar to charge up enough that he can let go another bomb, and then it's fully depleted again and he has to wait some more. He wasn't, like, he was definitely competitive with Omari Akhmedov, but the experience showed in that fight. Al-Hassan was just far too wild and too determined for that early finish for his own good. So I'm interested for this fight to see if, if he comes in the same guy or if that was a learning experience for him and he comes out with a different style. And that really, whether or not that's a good thing really depends on how he's changed his style, if he has changed it. So it's a little hard to say what he's going to come out looking like in this fight, but assuming he's still like a crazy first round finisher, assuming that not much has changed and that he's going to go for the same kind of wins, I am going to take him over Sabah Homasi. Only really if he wins by first round KO, I think, because I think Homasi does have the skill and craft with his striking to counter Hassan, to work well with him in the clinch as well. But early on, the athletic difference is going to be too strong. And I think that Tim Means just had a really easy time landing early on Homasi. Obviously, that was with a lot more technique and a lot more care put into how he set those shots up. But I really think Homasi is the kind of fighter who, if he can get backed up that easily by Tim Means, he's going to get cornered early by Al-Hassan and just have to shell up as he gets swung on. And I think he might go down. So I'm taking Abdulrazak Al-Hassan.
It's hard to say because Al-Hassan really has been over his career a live by the sword, die by the sword kind of fighter. Like, he either also gets early finishes in fights or he gets knocked out or submitted. He's only been to a decision for a loss once.
You're talking about Homasi, right?
Yeah, Homasi.
Okay.
In fact, he's only been to a decision twice overall in his whole career.
Yeah.
And that makes this hard to pick because I like Hamasi here from a technical fight. Like, the way Al Hassan fights, especially like Akhmedov training out of the same camp as Al Hassan, or as Homasi rather, like Homasi is going to have, he has a really good line on what to expect in this fight.
Did not know they trained together. That's a
good
piece of info.
And Homasi is also a willing takedown artist. Like he got Tim Means down early. I think one of the reasons that Means had so much success backing Homasi up and landing on him so much is because Homasi came in on short notice and gassed horribly. Like after their first ground exchange, when he got Means down for the first time and got back up, he just looked absolutely mouth open, tired as hell.
Mm-hmm.
If that's not the case here, and he can get takedowns and he can dictate range, then I think he can beat Abdul Razak Al Hassan. But it's just a case. It is a case of if, because I mean, Al Hassan had a bad fight against Akhmedov, and it was still a split decision. You know, he hits really hard. He's got great natural timing. He's a very good scrambler for as bad as he is at stopping takedowns. And so Homasi's gonna have to deal with that because Homasi's his recourse as a ground grappler is largely, almost entirely, to land shots. He's not a submission grappler. He has a guillotine and a kimura, neither of which lend you to believe that he's a dude who's gonna just like tangle somebody up on the ground and choke them out. Mm-hmm. I do feel like though that Al Hassan is not going to have made any adjustments. So
yeah, I kind of have the same feeling.
I'm gonna take Homasi to come out and wrestle him and stick him against the fence and to just try and take over this fight and take an ugly win. And I feel like the UFC is gonna kind of maybe burn out Al Hassan without getting the most fun they could out of him.
Yeah, certainly possible. And I think that if Homasi comes out and early takedowns are the name of the game, I mean, he could still then get countered with a big uppercut or something like that. But that's the way to approach Al Hassan, is to make him work as much as you can early without having that be the kind of work he wants to do, i.e. dropping bombs on your chin. So,
yeah, it should. Well, it should be noted here that Al Hassan has a great chin. And if Homasi does not, maybe I should be taking that into consideration too.
That's kind of what I see, is that I just think Homasi is going to be baited into trading at some point.
Yeah, because even if it's late in the fight, like, this is a dude who never goes to decision and wins them. So.
But, we're also talking about Abdul Razak Al Hassan, who is kind of a crude fighter.
Yeah. I don't know. All right, I'll be swayed. I'll take the smart pick on Al Hassan.
No, it means he's going to lose, Zane. Every time I sway you, I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's just Homasi's history of stoppage losses against somebody that hits that hard and is that accurate don't bode well.
Yeah, that's what had me worried as well.
Al Hassan is a good-sized favorite, opened at -265, jumped up to -225, and has slid down to -246. Homasi opened at +185 and has sort of gone up and down, steadily climbing to +198. I do like Homasi in this fight, but he's going to have to play a much more mindful, careful game than he has in the past.
He's going to have to fight kind of how Omari Akhmedov fought.
Yeah. That brings us to a women's strawweight bout: Felice Herrig, Courtney Casey. And I gotta pick. I like how Courtney Casey's game has been evolving, in that she has figured out that she is big and tough, and is now just starting to sit down in the pocket and wing hooks and uppercuts and say, deal with it. You're going to have to deal with me being hard to control, and you're going to have to deal with me being bigger and stronger than you, and I'm going to throw volume and land hard whenever I can. However, she still has a distinct lack of craft that I think means she gets beat by Felice Herrig. Because Felice Herrig has herself shown more willingness lately to sit down on strikes and throw volume in a way that she never used to. But moreover, has always been a good wrestler and grappler. A much better one than she gets credit for. And Casey's just a bad wrestler. Like, you know, Claudia Gadelha exposed that pretty easily. And then Jessica Aguilar exposed it and just does not have any of the speed or athleticism left anymore to take advantage of it. And but she, like, that was still a close fight at times. She still got Casey down constantly. She just didn't have any answer for how to, like, make anything happen on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that, you know, you look at Herrig's fight with Justine Kish, who's also a powerful athlete, and Herrig had no problems controlling Kish on the ground at all.
She didn't really have problems controlling her on the feet either.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
she kind of picked her apart.
Seeing that Herrig out there makes me feel like Casey just has too many huge holes in her game that Herrig can explode or exploit.
Explode the holes in her game. Courtney Casey just gets destroyed by Felice Herrig. Yeah, I kind of tend to agree. I kind of surprised myself, like, watching footage on this. I went in thinking, you know, Felice Herrig, not athletic. She's just not very quick. She's doesn't seem to really be as strong as it looks like she should be. And I kind of went into this thinking Courtney Casey's athleticism is going to be a big problem for her in this fight. She's got tons of speed and power. She's big for this division. She just likes to blitz people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a problem for Felice, but she really has turned a corner recently. Like, rewatching the fight with God, I'm blanking on her name. What's the Mexican fighter? Alexa Grasso.
Yep, Alexa Grasso.
Rewatching her fight with Alexa Grasso, and then rewatching the fight with Justine Kish, and seeing basically an improved version of what we saw against Grasso. Like, I think she came into the Grasso fight with a renewed confidence and calm that she had not really had much of earlier in her career, and then added some confidence to that for the Kish fight. And a confident Felice Herrig looked pretty damn good with her hands, honestly. Like, the left hook was a money shot for her against Kish, and she set it up and landed it constantly. She uses her jab really well, much better than she ever has in the past. She likes to paw with it. She'll kind of try to get her opponent to throw, make them lead, and then just sting them with the jab. She kind of plays with distance. She just looks crafty in a way that she never has before. She looks like she's calm and thinking at every moment in the fight. And I don't think Courtney Casey has that. I think she obviously still has the athleticism, and wouldn't be a shock at all if she ran out and just tagged Felice hard on the chin with a shot. It wouldn't even be a massive surprise to me if she were able to get something going from her back with her sort of sprint grappling style, maybe as soon as she's taken down. But as this fight goes on, I just kind of think Felice is going to be able to take it over. I just think she's going to maintain a nice chugging, steady pace and just try to pick Courtney Casey off and control the tempo of the fight. And control is going to win this one.
You know, other than a submission on TUF, Felice Herrig's never been stopped. You know,
No.
Like, she's never been knocked out. She's never been submitted. And her losses in her career, other than her 2 debut losses back to back, are to Barb Honchak, Carla Esparza, Tisha Torres, and Paige Van Zandt. And like, Courtney Casey isn't even Paige Van Zandt good.
She might be around that level. I don't know. How good is Paige Van Zandt good? I do.
I mean, it's an athlete who has an okay game and, like, uses some power.
Courtney Casey has more power, I think. But
she's never stopped anyone, or she's only stopped, like, only by submission. And then Christina Stansu, who's, you know, a regional level can crusher.
No, she's still not a knockout artist, but she definitely hurts people more when she hits them in the
Yeah,
cage.
this is true.
Really have the technique to deliver powerful punches at range. But yeah, you know, Felice Herrick's a good fighter, and she's always been a good fighter. It's just that in the past, like for most of her career, she was like a pretty good fighter for about 5 minutes per fight.
Well, and
And
the thing was always that everybody was like, oh, she's got this great kickboxing background. She's a kickboxer. And then she'd come out and she'd wrestle and grapple. And then everybody would be like, oh, this is boring and she sucks. And it's just like, she's just not, like, being an amateur kickboxer as a woman does not mean that. Like, you know, women's kickboxing and women's boxing, these are not strong talent pools that you're drawing out of.
But now she kind of actually looks like someone with a boxing background.
Yeah.
She's starting to actually bring the striking to bear, and it complements the game that she was really good at for all these years, which was her wrestling and grappling. So yeah, I'm taking Felice too. I think it's going to be a tough first round, but she's going to drag it out.
Seeing Courtney Casey getting taken down on a single from Jessica Aguilar she just picked up a single and turned a corner and Casey just fell over.
Yeah,
like
she didn't make adjustment number 1 to the single leg. She just instantly got taken down.
That to me tells me that's why I think Herrick wins this fight.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Odds on this fight: Courtney Casey is a very slight underdog. Opened at -105, adjusted up to +135, and has fallen back down to +117. Felice Herrig, the slight favorite, opened at -135, adjusted down to -150, and has adjusted up to has drifted up to -143. I like that. I like Herrig as a slight favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Lightweight bout next: David Tamor, Drakkar Klose. This is you, I think.
David Tamor, the insanely wild, reckless version of brother Daniel Tamor. David, or other way around. Sorry.
Other way around. He's the controlled one.
He's the controlled one. Sorry, I was thinking for a moment of Daniel and his insane fight with that
Scottish
fighter, I believe.
Yeah. Anyway,
David Tamor, very controlled, calm kickboxer, changing pace. Fight with Lando Venata, one of my favorite fights this year. I really, really like that bout, and I really like what David Tamor was able to show in that bout, which is he's a little shaky on the specifics of technique. He certainly gets wild, but he, unlike his brother, he gets wild the way Jose Aldo gets wild. Yeah. You know how sometimes Jose Aldo is like, I'm just going to swing really fucking hard on 4 punches in a row, and yeah, they're going to get a little loopy and bizarre, but I'm going to scare this dude off or hit him hard if he doesn't back down. Tamor has those flashes of reckless violence that complement an otherwise very intelligent and well put together striking game, which I think makes those crazy bouts of violence an intelligent part of the game, because they are strategically chosen. He only does it when he needs to do it, when he needs to back somebody off. Drakkar Klose is a solid and well put together fighter, but I just don't think he has the same depth of skill anywhere really that David Tamor has on the feet. He's good in the clinch. That's really the one thing where Klose stands out. He's a solid clinch fighter. Unfortunately for him, David Tamor is also pretty damn good in the clinch. He got a lot of his most meaningful shots against Lando Venata done in that range specifically. He is also, despite what his like striking heavy style would suggest, pretty capable takedown artist and a very good takedown defender. His wrestling seems really solid, like a lot of fighters from that All-Stars team. I just don't
trains a lot with Alir Latifi.
Yeah, all those guys. Just like Gustafson's like shockingly good wrestling. Tamor has the same kind of thing going on. The takedowns he hit on Lando Venata were some of the more surprising aspects of that fight as well, and they allowed him to set up his strikes. He's just an intelligent, well put together fighter and looks like a more experienced finished product than Drakkar Klose at the time being. It's not that Drakkar Klose isn't a good fighter. He's just not quite at that level yet.
Yeah, Klose exposed that Mark Diakese has no connective tissue to his game at all. But Diakese also still almost won that fight. Like, it was still a split decision because he's, you know, hyper athletic and powerful, and Klose's game is not that deep. Like, he has connective parts for all of it. He goes from range striking to a clinch striking to takedown and ground striking well, but none of those parts of his game are incredibly deep, except only his clinch game, and even that is like it's a really great thing for him to have it at like at the lower levels, but it's not an elite like top of the food chain clinch game.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I mean, he's got a guy who's got a deeper striking game than him from range, who can compete with him in the clinch, and Close isn't any kind of amazing lockdown wrestler who's just going to take you down and overwhelm you on the mat. So I got to go Tamer here.
Yeah. Close just doesn't seem to have many options open to him other than landing a Hail Mary.
Yeah. Otherwise, he has to make this a grinding clinch fight, which means spending a lot of time with somebody who's got a good Muay Thai background and, hits really hard inside.
He could, if he can get that kind of fight.
Yep.
David Tamer, like some of that wildness, some of that being willing to respond crazy, like Aldo again, a little more tactician than strategist, I think. And had Lando Venata not gassed before him in their fight, that may have been a problem, that he was also slowing down considerably at the end of that bout and becoming more hittable.
Yeah.
So Close could definitely make something happen in that regard. I just don't think he's dangerous enough to turn that into a finish. And if that's his route to victory, I think he still gives up the early rounds.
Yeah, a lot of Close's range striking is a lunging power shot to get himself into the clinch. He's not a comfortable striker from range at all.
Yeah. I'm ready for some amazing Thai style kicks from David Tamer, by the way. One of my favorite kickers in the UFC.
Definitely. Tamer is a slight favorite, open at -170, adjusted to -161, is slid out to -184. Reasonable favorite, I guess you'd say. Close is the underdog, opened at +130, has steadily climbed up to +152.
I think there's some value on David Tamer there. I know we're not really doing a lot of betting picks anymore, but I think there is some value there. I don't think it's a very favorable matchup stylistically for Drakkar Close. And
that brings us to a welterweight bout: Alex Oliveira, Yancy Medeiros. This is me, yeah. And Yancy Medeiros is still Yancy Medeiros.
Yeah.
Like, he's one of those fighters that over his career, he's sharpened up his tools. He's gotten a little bit better at everything. But fighting like a Diaz brother, when you're not a Diaz brother, has not had a high ceiling for anyone.
Nope.
Medeiros, his offense, when he is the one pressing the action, he is good in stretches. He can throw some nicely technical single shots or a technical combination here or there that really surprise people. Defensively, everything seems to surprise him.
Mm-hmm.
He has his chin up, he has his elbows out, and he's just like...
Yeah, a lot of that Diaz confidence does come from an underrated ability to see shots coming and not take the full brunt of them. Like, even Nick Diaz, who's not quite as defensively savvy as Nate, has never been a guy who just lets people hit him clean on the chin.
Yeah.
That's kind of what happens to Yancy Medeiros all the time, though.
Yeah. Yancy Medeiros ends up in fights like his Trinaldo fight where he just gets brutalized for 3 full rounds.
But he's definitely Diaz tough, because that fight should have been stopped in the 3rd round, and Yancy Medeiros still won like the last 40 seconds of the bout.
Yeah, he is incredibly tough. But if he doesn't have a durability advantage, like a huge durability advantage, if it's not his ability to, if he's not hurting his opponent continuously, he's not winning. Like, the dudes he's beating, Eric Silva, Sean Spencer, John McDessie, Joe Proctor, Damon Jackson, these guys they're either not that great of athletes or they're not very durable. McDessie was even split decision, but dudes like Silva and Proctor.
A lot of people, including me, thought McDessie won that fight.
Yeah. So, on the flip side, Alex Oliveira is hyper durable as well, incredibly tough. And when things are going well for him, is just incredibly confident and hard to shake.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's not the most technically put together fighter, but he doesn't get shocked the way that Yancy Medeiros does. So I got to go with Alex Oliveira here. I think he's going to land the power shots over the fight. While he'll get hit, but if it's both of them getting hit, he's going to be the one who's better braced for it. He's going to be the one that is more in control of the pace and dictating the range of the fight. So I got to take Alex Oliveira.
Yeah, he's also, for both of these guys being the same height, I imagine we're going to see a pretty striking physical disparity in terms of like the width and thickness of their bodies. Both guys 5'11", but Yancy Medeiros has never struck me as a very heavily muscled or very strong fighter. He's wirier than Alex Oliveira is, I guess what I'm trying to say. And Alex Oliveira uses that strength very well to drag his opponents to the ground, to make them carry his weight, to grind on them. And I think having that option in his back pocket, as well as probably being a clever enough and tricky enough range striker to land good counters on Yancy Medeiros pretty regularly, I think he's just kind of got the options in this fight. Yancy basically has a guillotine or a walk you down and hit you with a really pretty uppercut. And aside from that, which again, those tend to save him, as you said, against lesser athletes and less durable fighters. Oliveira is neither. He's probably the substantially better athlete and very durable. So Oliveira all the way.
Odds on that bout, Alex Oliveira is the favorite, opening at -215, adjusting to -183, and falling steadily to -235. Medeiros opening at +165, adjusting up to +185, or adjusting down to +160, I should say, up and down, +160, and rising steadily to +190. I like those odds where they are right now, frankly.
Yeah, I'm cool with it.
Feels like the right place for the fight. That brings us to the final prelim bout, lightweight bout, Charles Oliveira, Paul Felder. And this is you, yeah.
I quite like this fight, and I'm not 100% sure how it plays out. In fact, I'm even having trouble remembering which of these guys I picked on heavy hands this week, so I may end up with a different pick as I talk myself through it here. Thank God Chucky Alvarez is still at lightweight. That's the first thing I'll say. Because when he said after that last win over Will Brooks, oh, by the way, I'm going back to 145 after this, my brain nearly exploded. Because I hear so much of this from fighters, but when has there been? That would be like John Lineker saying, actually, I'm going to fight at 115 from now on. Like, how many times do you need to miss the weight limit? How many results do you need to have that suggest that the weight is really affecting you? That you're getting your chin checked and that you're having weird injuries and all of this before you say, I need to go up to 155, a division, by the way, for which Chucky Olives is perfectly suited. He's the right size for a lightweight. He's not a small man. He seems to be strong enough. And as a skillful fighter, he's improving and grounding himself out on the feet a little bit by bit. But his submission grappling is really, really dangerous. So he can definitely hang with these bigger guys. I'm glad that he's doing it.
Crazy misplaced confidence is just a hallmark of the breed when it comes to fighters. Like, it's there's always that some random excuse for why things didn't work out the last time, rather than just, oh well, maybe I'm actually not good at this. Maybe I suck at weight cutting. It's like, well, I was sick. Oh, I injured my leg. Oh, if I
but why? Why all that misplaced confidence? Like, you don't have to be a featherweight.
I know, but
nobody's asking you to be a featherweight.
If it was all about paying attention to the whys, a lot of these people probably wouldn't fight.
Yeah, no, you're probably right. So against Paul Felder, right? We have an interesting contest here because Paul Felder likes to walk people down and counter them, and that hasn't changed. What has changed is that he's gotten better at doing it. He's both at the walking down part and at the countering part, especially the making people expose themselves to his counters is something that he has improved and picked up on in his more recent performances. is he going to be able to come forward against Charles Oliveira? Is he going to be able to cut off the cage and control the pace of the bout? I kind of doubt it, because Charles Oliveira does. He's shown some mix-ups here, but reviewing his footage, like, he does still like to get in people's faces and make them respond to him. He likes to put the pressure on. I think he feels that's his best way to then set up his very underrated wrestling game, set up a nice shot, and get his opponents to the ground. And on the ground, Paul Felder's not a bad grappler, but I still remember how much he was hung up by Jason Sago in one of his early UFC fights. And that was just basically being caught up with like a less athletic but very skilled grappler. Here we have a pretty athletic, skilled, and much more aggressive grappler in Charles Oliveira. So Paul Felder does not want to go to the ground with Oliveira. And I think, like, he can, the thing is, Chucky Olives he's pretty hittable, and he does not react well to being hit. His confidence can be shattered, but I still have a feeling that's going to be a little better at lightweight, not draining himself badly before every bout, coming in and also probably being able to withstand punches more physically, having more water in his body to help his brain from bouncing around his skull when he gets hit. I'm going to take Oliveira. I just don't think that Felder can push enough of a pace or be assertive enough on the feet to prevent Oliveira backing him up and setting him up to take him to the ground. And once it goes there, you have to favor Oliveira.
Yeah, Oliveira is a good grappler. He's actually had, like, you know, really good success. You know, his the Cruikshank fight, his grappling saved him in that fight.
Oh, Felder?
Yeah, Felder.
Oh, yeah,
but
yeah. I still remember the way he set up that rear naked choke, the way he pushed down on Cruikshank's neck, but he was losing the fight otherwise without his grappling.
And it's also like, it's Darren Cruikshank. Like,
right.
You know, Darren Cruikshank, grappling has ended up being a bane of Darren Cruikshank way more times than you can count, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The big thing that makes me pick Oliveira along with you, because I do think if this goes more than a round, there's a very good chance Felder takes it. Mm-hmm. Just for mental toughness and grit and the ability to land something big that hurts Oliveira and changes the fight.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that Felder's clinch game, even his clinch game, is passive.
Yeah.
Like, he is a power striker from the clinch, but most of what he does in the clinch is hang out and get controlled and then find a spot to land a big shot in response to what his opponent is doing to him in the clinch. Like, you watch his fight with Stevie Ray, and Ray is just controlling him and tying him up and has him against the fence and leaning on him. And then Felder, like, gets a little space and lands, like, one huge shot that puts Ray down. And that's it. But up to that point, Felder was not controlling any of that fight.
And I think some of that comes from the fact that Paul Felder is a smart fighter. Mm-hmm. He knows, like, he throws so much power, and I think he's cautious about gassing himself, about missing too big with a naked shot and all that. It makes sense, but he's still coming along. He's still in a process of learning that adding more volume and activity does not just have to mean throwing more full power counters or whatever, or having your perfect timing. We've said this a few times, I think, but he's learning to be less choosy, less picky with when he throws and how he throws, but he's not 100% there yet. Yeah. Is also, Paul Felder's takedown defense is a little shaky. Like, it's not, he's a pretty good takedown defender and definitely a dangerous counter wrestler with his strikes. But can he stop, like, a good, strong double against the fence from Charles Oliveira? I don't know.
I mean, Charles Oliveira even got Ricardo Lamas down.
Yeah, he's a pretty good wrestler, man. He doesn't get enough.
And if Felder is just going to concede clinch aggression to Charles Oliveira, then I think he gets taken down. So I'm picking Charles Oliveira as well.
Chucky Olives.
Felder is currently the favorite, opening at -170 and trending upward to -122. So the line's getting closer to even. Oliveira opening at +130 and falling steadily to -102. So that brings us to the main card finally. Women's strawweight bout to kick things off. Tecia Torres, Michelle Waterson, and in a fight of point karatekas in MMA, Waterson is the more dynamic finisher. She definitely tends to throw herself into aggressive setups more. She is also has the much less well-adapted game to MMA. Tecia Torres, the big problem with her has been that she never sits down on anything. So and partially that's because she's short as hell. So she can't really afford to be playing I'm going to sit down on a punch and try to beat you with a power shot. It has to be, I'm going to leap in with a quick flurry of short strikes and then get back out as quickly as possible because, she doesn't feel like she can afford to play a battle of power and range.
I mean, personally, I would still prefer a good 1-2-3 with her feet relatively set and then an angle. And I know that Tecia Torres can throw those kind of strikes. She used to throw more of them in her earlier fights. I'm not personally a huge fan of the flighty new striking of Tecia Torres, but
I don't know if it's that new. I think it's just
it's new to me because I still remember how excited I was for Tecia when she was making her debut. And I had my eye on her from the start, and her style hasn't come along the way I expected it to, I guess.
The thing is that other than TUF, which obviously appeared to be really just not good for her and not work for her, like it doesn't for some fighters, you could argue that Tecia Torres is undefeated, with her only loss being that unanimous decision to Rosa Namajunas, which is pretty contestable.
Oh yeah, which is why I can complain about the decisions, this decisions she's made stylistically, but they're clearly all intelligent, thought out decisions because her game works. As a whole, it works.
She's a good wrestler, a very good grappler, tends to be overly safe with both, but as we saw in the Juliana Lima fight, maybe that's a confidence thing where she's just gaining more confidence over time, and in the Lima fight, Lima shot in on her and she immediately took her back and choked her out. Waterson, her big problem is that so much of what she does comes out of these side kicks and leading, sort of lunging lead hand, lead leg punches and kicks, these point karate style setups she uses, that she continually turns her head on her opponent and loses sight of them. And Rosa Namajunas just lit her shit up for that. And otherwise, over her career, she has never been a consistent striker standing because of that. Everyone has always been able to take angles and close her down, or if they haven't, it's because it's like her Yasuko Tamada fight where she's fighting a 50-year-old woman for no reason at all, and she's mostly been she's been a much more successful dynamic submission threat where she's willing to open herself up to getting submitted and go hard for submissions herself. But I don't think she can take Torres down, even though she's got a crafty head and arm throw that she uses. And I don't think she can submit her there. Torres is just a really good, solid defensive grappler. And if it's a battle of volume on the feet, I got to pick Torres there. So Tecia Torres.
I'm getting a little update here in the earpiece, Zane. Yasuko Tamada has just been tabbed as the next opponent for Gabby Garcia. So I'm very excited for that. I didn't even realize that Michelle Waterson fought a 50-year-old woman. Why would she do that?
Because Invicta didn't have anyone for her to fight, and they just brought somebody in.
There we go.
It was a real low point in Invicta matchmaking.
Definitely. Yeah, Waterson, she's the point you make about her turning her head Very, very true, because she likes this long side stance. She doesn't seem to fully understand the limitations of it or how vulnerable it makes her. So she kind of got caught in the same position that Luke Rockhold got caught by Michael Bisping, except just with a strike from the opposite side. But turning aside and taking your eyes away from your opponent, bad fundamental technique. I think the reason Waterson ends up in those positions too is that a lot of the ideas behind her striking are sort of built on the notion that your opponent will wait, you expect them to play the guessing game of what am I going to throw next? What's the next thing? This kick looks like this kick, and then this kick looks like this kick. And like, well, if that doesn't come with like some pressure that forces the opponent to react, that allows you to grab the initiative, then what's to stop them from just taking the initiative and not playing your game with you? And so then she ends up kind of like improvising and guessing out of these potentially awkward positions and gets caught. And her ground game's kind of the same way. Like, there's just not a lot of structure to it. There's a lot of good moves in there, but there's not a ton of structure. And that's the strong contrast between her and Tisha Torres, who is a fighter whose game is like just structure. Sometimes to the point of, you can criticize her for maybe playing a game rather than fighting sometimes, when a little ferocity would help.
Mm-hmm.
But I also tend to think that that's going to come out with time. And that may be part of the reason that Tisha Torres's evolution has been kind of weird and circuitous. It's easy to forget she's still very young and still not that experienced in terms of numbers, which is crazy because her record is loaded with elite fighters' names. Tisha Torres is a really good fighter. That's basically all there's to say about it. She has the options in this fight. She can choose to take it down. She can choose to strike. As long as she pressures and is making Michelle Waterson react to her, I think this is her fight to lose.
Odds on the bout, Tisha Torres is a sizable favorite, opening at -180 and falling steadily to -243. Michelle Waterson opening at +140 and rising steadily to +195.
What do you think the thought process is behind making this fight from WME? Or if they even have any input into what the matchmakers do, who knows?
Yeah, I think the thought process here is honestly that I know Torres has been really like unable to get fights and begging for him, and it's otherwise, they want to keep Michelle Waterson out in front of people. So Torres is
not a good way to do it.
I know.
Because Michelle Waterson, I know that she is quite controversially a client of William Morris of WME. Like, they represent her, and this is like not the way you want to get your client out there by having her fight, the woman who arguably beat the current champion in one of her more recent fights.
Well, it's also kind of the unfortunate thing of what do you do with Michelle Waterson, who is an entertaining, notable, magnetic figure who is exciting to watch and just not good enough to be an elite top 5 fighter.
And again, some of that does have to do with the fact that she's an atom weight.
Yep.
She's really like, even against Tisha Torres is going to be like the smallest person she's ever fought.
Yeah.
In this division.
All right. That brings us to a lightweight bout. Eddie Alvarez, Justin Gaethje. This is you.
All right. Let me collect my nerves for a second. What a fight, Zane. What a fight. Eddie Alvarez is both the perfect victim and the perfect foil to what Justin Gaethje does. And that tends to be the recipe for a good Eddie Alvarez fight. And any recipe is generally a good recipe for a good Justin Gaethje fight. The big question here is, the major dynamic as I see it is Justin Gaethje's pressure against Eddie Alvarez's lateral movement. That doesn't sound too complicated, but each of them has a lot of wrinkles that they can use to challenge the other's approach to the fight. Justin Gaethje, a big one for Justin Gaethje are the low kicks. He is going to have a field day chopping away at Eddie Alvarez's legs as he tries to circle away and prevent himself from being cornered. That worked fantastically well against Eddie Alvarez when he fought Donald Cerrone. Dustin Poirier got a lot done with his kicks when he fought Eddie Alvarez. Gaethje is not only a good kicker, technically speaking, but an extremely powerful one. His low kicks are really, really devastating. And somebody even posted an example from his rematch with Luis Palomino. This was on r/MMA the other day. And you could visibly tell Justin Gaethje kicked Palomino right in the knee with his instep and clearly hurt his foot. He put it down and wobbled. To prevent Palomino from seeing that his foot was hurt, he just instantly kicked him on the inside of the leg with his other leg. And then that was a fight in which he finished him with right low kicks. So that's the thing you have to worry about with Justin Gaethje is it doesn't matter if you have like a one-piece counter to one aspect of his game. It doesn't matter if you've come up with a great counter to the right uppercut or a great counter to the right low kick. He's just going to keep plugging away until you finish him or he finishes you. Eddie Alvarez is probably one of the best, probably one of the most dangerous wounded animals in the sport of MMA. He has that Juan Manuel Marquez style of killer instinct when he's hurt, that he's probably at his most dangerous when you've just wobbled him and he is really looking for the kill. Because Eddie Alvarez doesn't see that as an opportunity to survive. He sees that as an opportunity to finish you because you're trying to finish him, just like Robbie Lawler does. When somebody comes in after hurting Robbie Lawler, he is looking to land a big right hook as soon as they try to swing on him. And that's going to make it really interesting because Justin Gaethje is definitely going to hurt Eddie Alvarez, but he's not definitely going to be able to finish him right away. In fact, he almost certainly won't because it's Eddie Alvarez. And he's definitely going to get hit when Alvarez starts swinging in return. So I think there's a serious chance here that Gaethje takes some spectacular counters in the early round, especially before Alvarez starts to slow down, which he tends to do in most of his fights and will definitely do if he's being hit in the legs and the body a lot. But Eddie Alvarez is going to be very, very dangerous whenever Gaethje hurts him. And if I had some advice for Justin Gaethje, I already said this on Heavy Hands this week, but I will reiterate it here. If you need to try to finish Eddie Alvarez, do it in the clinch. Try to tie him up after you hurt him and hit him with knees and short uppercuts. Do not let him exchange as he's hurt because that's when Eddie Alvarez is dangerous. But ultimately, I think Alvarez is going to get his best work done reacting to what Gaethje is doing to him. He is going to be pulled into Gaethje's fight, and barring a perfect shot that puts Gaethje out, which is a definite possibility here, Gaethje is going to break him down and eventually put him away.
Yeah, this is a damn tough one because it is like you watch Gaethje in that fight he had with Michael Johnson, and it's going really well for him. Yeah. And then he gets wild and opens up, and just about gets knocked the fuck out at the end of the first round.
And then just about gets knocked the fuck out in the middle of the second round.
And just about gets knocked the fuck out in the middle of the second round. And his own Eddie Alvarez-like instinct of just, well, you're hurting me, that's my opportunity to hurt you right back, saves him because that was not at all Michael Johnson's instinct. When Michael Johnson gets hurt, his instinct is, you're hurting me, I just want you to stop, and I kind of want this fight to stop too. And
a thought which I don't blame Michael Johnson for having.
No, God, no. That's the normal human reaction.
Yeah. Please make this stop. Yeah.
The only thing that really has me picking Gaethje here is honestly that Alvarez has been stopped. And Gaethje hasn't. Like, that's really it. Because otherwise, I do, you're right. Alvarez does slow down in a way that Gaethje doesn't necessarily. But I also think that Alvarez kind of tends to fight smarter as the fight goes on, even if he does slow down.
Yeah, he tends to have his wild, I got hurt and I'm trying to kill you background early in the fight.
Yeah, and then after that, round. He picks a smarter game plan and, goes ahead with that. It doesn't always necessarily matter. In the Donald Cerrone fight, he still kind of got picked apart for a lot of that fight. Although I think he did well late in the last round.
He was having trouble standing, but he still had his moments. Like he was, he's still a clever fighter. He really does have that, like Marquez sort of instinct where he just sort of sharpens up and becomes focused only after he's been hurt.
So, yeah, I am going to pick Justin Gaethje because I know Alvarez can be stopped, and I know that Gaethje will mix up his targets and will chop his legs and crack him in the face and will not go, neither guy is going to go away. But, you can't ignore Gaethje just about getting flatlined in that Johnson fight. And, like, Alvarez having the exact same reaction of fighting back when somebody's coming after him. And, like, it's right there for both guys.
But you also can't ignore the fact that in the Johnson fight, it was the exact same punch that knocked Dustin Poirier out cold.
Mm-hmm.
And Gaethje didn't even fall down. He was extremely hurt, but he didn't even fall. He stayed on both feet when he took that massive right uppercut. He is insanely tough.
Both these dudes just seem to be able to, like, their whole body seems like it can work on automatic for multiple rounds.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, these are the best autopilot fighters in this division.
Yeah, so I'm going to take Justin Gaethje here, but I am going to look forward to every second of this fight. Gaethje opened at minus 245 and has slowly trended up to minus 175 and is now minus 187, starting to fall just a little bit in the last couple hours. Alvarez opened at plus 175, has fallen down to about plus 146 and has stayed pretty stable now, plus 154, trending up in the last couple of days or whatever. Yeah, I like seeing Gaethje as the favorite here. I think that makes sense. Just like I say, just on the chin, but both guys are going to get hurt. So
yeah, Eddie Alvarez hasn't had many fights that are quite on that Justin Gaethje level of insane violence, but it is also worth remembering he's had a lot of nearly Gaethje-like fights over the course of a very long career.
And he's only been stopped twice. Once by Conor McGregor, and the other time by Nick Thompson in 2007. So it's not like his chin is like, it's not like that style is just suddenly bad. He fought Dustin Poirier, got hurt early, and swarmed back on Poirier.
Oh, he was about done in that fight. Like that. Yeah. The only thing that is comparably impressive to the toughness of Justin Gaethje is the toughness of Eddie Alvarez.
Yep.
So yeah, that's why I'm so excited.
Brings us to a flyweight bout: Henry Cejudo, Sergio Pettis, and I guess the biggest read I can have on this fight is that Pettis does not yet know how far he has to go yet, or how far he has to go.
How do you mean?
Like, Henry Cejudo has been to the top of the mountain, and he got totally owned there. He got pwned for gamer speak.
Very cool, very hip saying.
I know, very hip. I'm so young and with it. But getting beat and just getting his ass handed to him has very obviously done exactly what I thought it would do to Henry Cejudo, which is just light a fucking fire under him.
Turned him into a savage.
Yeah, just turn him into a brutally better, more efficient fighter. Sergio Pettis has been slowly improving the way a young fighter with a good camp slowly improves. He has learned from some bad losses and has tightened up. He has learned to become an incredibly controlled defensive fighter in a way that he had to learn because he got knocked out a couple times.
Yeah.
He has not yet learned to become a savage. He has not yet learned to go out and just turn it on somebody and dominate them in a fight. And I think that's the big thing with this Cejudo bout, is if this is Cejudo is maybe a somewhat less structured striker. His fight with Wilson Hayes certainly was a big leap forward in technique. He looked like a much cleaner, sharper striker in that fight. But he is a endlessly confident, powerful, aggressive fighter. And he goes out to impose his game on people. Pettis goes out looking to control the fight and not get hurt. And that means that, early against Brandon Moreno was able to take Pettis down, was able to work Pettis over a little. And then as the fight went on and it became clear that Moreno only had 2 or 3 tools that he could use, Pettis was able to get his defensive read on everything and just, take over and fight a defensive, smart fight. I just don't think that Cejudo is ever going to give him the chance to do that. So Cejudo may not finish Pettis. Pettis is, he's been TKO'd, he's been knocked out, and he's been submitted before. But he tends to be a good defensive fighter off his back. He tends to be a good defensive fighter at range in terms of keeping himself safe and not getting hit too hard, especially now. But I don't think he's going to match Cejudo for volume, and I don't think he's going to be able to land the kind of hard shots that Cejudo does. So I'm taking Cejudo by decision.
It's an interesting point about just sort of the lacking intensity with Sergio Pettis, because he definitely had like the Moreno fight. There's been a couple like that where he's taken a bit to get going. He's also had a couple fights in which he has come out and won the first round, and then it kind of slips away from him. But he never seems to just confidently control the duration of an entire fight. It's hard to say why that is, but it is definitely a strong contrast to the Henry Cejudo we've seen in his last 2 outings, who was just brimming with fire and confidence against Joe Benavidez. I think a lot of people still think that Cejudo deserved to win that fight, but at the very least, he was just completely neck and neck with one of the most decorated members of this division for 3 straight rounds. And then he just obliterated Wilson Hayes, showed the same kind of confidence and aggression, but with a lot more sort of deliberate intent, setting up his shots, timing counters, playing with his food a little more even. And that's not really something Sergio Pettis does. Pettis, I think, is capable of that kind of thing. He's shown moments of real toughness and grit that I think most people don't automatically looking at him assume he has much of. I remember when Moraga hit him in the first round of their fight, John Moraga hit him with a big right hand, and Pettis Golovkin'd Moraga with a left hand counter. He took the shot, his head snapped back, and he just kept coming through with the left and knocked Moraga down. Just landed the better shot in an exchange in which both guys got to land clean. That speaks to a kind of ferocity that Pettis has within him, but Henry Cejudo has embraced the beast. He has really, really likes beating the shit out of people, and you can tell. And I tend to agree. I think Pettis has the technical edge in a lot of ways on the feet. And if Cejudo is unfocused or overconfident, Pettis can definitely piece him up, especially if Cejudo has fallen so much in love with the idea of being like a karate-style fighter that he spends a lot of the bout backing up. Because I think Sergio is sneakily at his best coming forward, kind of like his big brother. He's pretty good when he can keep you on the end of his reach and set you up for the cross and the kicks in particular at range. But probably Henry Cejudo can just try to run over him, and it might work a little bit. So the early aggression is going to be an interesting factor, and I think it's going to be enough for Cejudo to put Pettis on the back foot. And I'm not sure if he's going to finish him. Sergio is pretty tough, more so than those knockouts would have you believe, but it does kind of seem like Cejudo has some real knockout power in those hands. So I'll take Henry Cejudo by TKO.
And he's also, he's got the wrestling chops and grappling to
yeah, let's not even we barely even touched on Cejudo's wrestling, which is always in his back pocket, something he can go to tie people up in the clinch.
Yeah, it's just I just feel like Pettis doesn't, even when he hurts people, he's not finishing people at this point. Like he's become a purely decision fighter in the UFC, and if Cejudo's not feeling threatened, then he's just going to go after him.
But maybe
to his detriment. Maybe that'll walk him into something. But Cejudo's incredibly tough, so Pettis would have to show more finishing ability than he's shown before to make that matter.
Yeah, because it doesn't seem like he's gonna, just by frustrating him, he's gonna have a hard time denting the confidence of Cejudo. That way, he's gonna have to hurt him.
Cejudo opened at -385, adjusted up and down to -286, and has stayed pretty even there. He's at -280 right now. Pettis opened at +265, dropped down to +175, and is now slowly rising to +271. So, yeah, those odds seem fine to me. Pettis is a very good fighter, a much better fighter than he gets credit for, so he shouldn't be too wide. But Cejudo is fighting like a champion who can't beat the champion,
Yeah. Yeah, and who might be able to beat the champion based on his recent performances.
Yeah, maybe someday. That brings us to the co-main event now. Alistair Overeem, Francis Ngannou. And this is a fight that, so many heavyweight bouts, I feel like, well, I could spend all this time looking at the actual technical aspects of the bout, or I can just pick what my gut tells me.
Yeah.
And my gut tells me that Ngannou is just too fast and too powerful for an Overeem whose athleticism seems to be slipping, who looks a little chunkier, has a little bit of belly hanging over his shorts these days, is taking who is, he's reversed his bully style into something that is now very much a outfighting bully where he likes to get in, pot shot, and get out. But he's taking that to extremes of inactivity at this point that are working only because some of the maybe only working because the guys he's fighting are similarly activity devoid, are a latter-day Fabricio Verdum, a latter-day Mark Hunt, and a latter-day Andrei Arlovsky. And against Miocic, we saw things got wild and sloppy, and he got knocked out. And I feel like Ngannou, he can absolutely hit Ngannou. He can absolutely find Ngannou's chin once or twice, maybe hurt him. But I have more faith in Ngannou's power kickboxing here. The big interesting thing will be if we see a classic Overeem trick, which is just to be a power wrestler.
Yeah, that could work.
Because if he just goes out and says, "Okay, I'll take you down, beat you up that way, land huge elbows from top," then the best, like Ngannou, he fought off Curtis Blades and Luis Enrique, but neither of them are all that experienced.
Yeah.
So that's something to watch, but I gotta trust what I like what Ngannou's putting together out there. So technically, Overeem has all the more options, but Ngannou is a much better put together fighter than, say, Junior Albini is, and Overeem is more on the Andrei Arlovsky end of things.
Yeah, he's there. Certainly in terms of fragility.
Yeah.
Although I think he's, for a few years now, been...
He's better than Arlovsky at keeping his shit together.
Yeah, he has looked for the past few years the way Arlovsky looked in the Albini fight. Like, he comes in with a sense of purpose, knowing how he's approaching his opponent. I don't think he's not been... Arlovsky had a stretch there where he was just like, what's he doing here? What's his mission in this fight? And you never really wonder that with Overeem. You kind of know what his strategy is, and he fights to that goal. I think the difference in skill is probably going to show in this fight.
Yeah.
I do have some serious questions about how adaptable Francis Ngannou really is.
Yep.
He has basically had a UFC career up to this point where his opponents have all been adapting to him. They've all been a little tentative or a little anxious and like rushed into shots, or they all feel like they cannot stand at range with him. And Alistair Overeem didn't really feel like that with anybody.
Yeah.
Unless they're like a Stipe Miocic.
No, well, he doesn't feel like that with anybody to his own detriment at times.
Sure. Yeah, no, yeah, that's a good point. But he's not going to be, I think, overawed by Ngannou. I think Overeem's experience and skill are going to show here, but it still doesn't protect him from potentially just being obliterated with a single shot. How good is Ngannou's chin, Zane?
Uh,
I don't really know.
we don't really know.
It's the thing. There's so many unknowns about Ngannou still because all of his fights are very short, and I don't know. I think Overeem can kind of defy the growing Ngannou aura a little bit. I think he has the confidence in his skills, even if he doesn't always have the confidence against other opponents on his level. I get a vibe from him on like the embedded and stuff. He kind of knows that Ngannou is brimming with confidence, but doesn't know as much shit as he knows. And I think he's going to come into this fight really looking to show that off. To say, all right, well, we're going to transition into the clinch. We're going to see how you deal with the clinch. How do you defend a takedown? How do you respond when an opponent spends a full 2 minutes of the fight just retreating and circling the cage and making you chase after them? What happens when you miss big and get hit with a sharp left hand in return? I don't know. I think there's a lot of games that Overeem is skilled enough to play with Ngannou. It really comes down to, does he get enough time to play them? And is his confidence there to allow him, to put him in a playful mindset? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to take Overeem over Ngannou. I think Ngannou is just a little too green as of now, and Overeem remains one of the most experienced and decorated people in this division, and I think still has a lot to show. One remark he said on the embedded stood out to me. He was like, he went on the UFC Unfiltered podcast or whatever, and they're like, why, how do you feel about fighting? And he said he's in like the Anderson Silva place where he's just said like, oh, I just really like competing. Like I really enjoy it. And when I lose, I don't feel like a sore loser. I don't get sour. I say, let's play again. I want to keep going and keep competing. That kind of attitude is something that Ngannou is not. That sort of veteran attitude is something Ngannou's never encountered yet. Except maybe in the form of Arlovsky. But
that fight ended in a minute and a half.
Right. That's the thing. Is like Pat said on Heavy Hands, his estimation was 45% chance Ngannou knocks out Overeem, and then like 50% chance Overeem outclasses him. And then a 5% chance some other shit happens.
Yeah, I mean, heavyweight is all about gatekeepers keeping the gates closed, and we still get the same 5 guys at the top of the heavyweight division, just in constant revolution.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
even when we have a promising young fighter, he doesn't. That's what I'm banking on, Zane. He doesn't get to fight for the title, okay? Because that's not how this weight class works.
Yeah, it is. It could easily be the case. I just think that Ngannou. The big thing I think is that Ngannou has the speed still to catch up to Overeem when Overeem is being passive.
Mm-hmm.
Or when Overeem is leaping in and taking those chances that he takes. And that's something that, like, Verdum and Hunt didn't have anymore. Like, we talk like, he used to have 2 speeds where it was, like, fast and then really, really, really fucking fast and way faster than you expect.
Mm-hmm.
And now Hunt is just faster than you expect him to be. And Ngannou still has both those speeds.
Yeah, that's for sure. And some real natural timing when it comes to placing his counters. Although I will say a lot of the impressive stuff Ngannou's done has been on the counter.
Yeah.
And Overeem certainly can be countered, but it might mean that he sort of gets dragged into this very thoughtful, slow pace.
Yep.
Where he's waiting for Overeem to expose himself. And if Overeem doesn't, like Ngannou is going to have to think strategically if Overeem approaches this fight the way I think he will.
No, yeah, I think there's every possibility that Overeem makes Ngannou not look very good for a while.
But at any moment, Ngannou could obliterate him.
Yeah. So
but
I'm banking
at any
on
moment, Overeem could obliterate Ngannou. That's the thing, right? We don't really know how well Ngannou takes a shot, and Overeem is still a very dangerous striker.
Yeah. Ngannou's chin is held up well so far for what few shots he's taken, but Andrei Arlovski is undoubtedly the biggest puncher he's faced. And he didn't have to take many shots from Andrei Arlovski.
He didn't really get hit, did he?
I don't think he did. Ngannou is a reasonably sized favorite, opened at minus 230, adjusted to minus 194, and has fallen consistently down to minus 249. Overeem, the underdog, opened at plus 170 and has trended upward steadily to plus 199, dropping just in the past day or so a little from plus 205 to plus 199.
Francis Ngannou, I think it's fair to say a large favorite, 6'4". Alistair Overeem, a slightly smaller underdog than he would have been last year.
Oh, Lord.
Let's move on quickly, Zane, before anyone has time to notice the dad joke.
Okay, featherweight bout, main event, Max Holloway, Jose Aldo. And
whose go is this?
Let's see. Me. Hey, it's me.
Well, they were all me by that reckoning.
But okay. I have the same question now that I have the first time they fought. Which is, what happens if Jose Aldo opens up with a bunch of low kicks on Max Holloway? I still don't know.
Yep.
He landed one. Holloway did absolutely nothing to check it. Aldo,
I thought he did check the one. Aldo landed one and got countered right away. And
he maybe got countered, but he didn't check it.
Yeah, maybe not. I don't remember it landing very clean either, though.
I'm pretty sure I saw there when I was watching tape. I remember one clean low kick that he landed.
I'll trust your word.
But
only one.
And so there were reports afterward like, oh, Jose Aldo was injured. Maybe that's also why he gassed out and got tired. All that stuff. I want to believe that. I like Jose Aldo a lot as a fighter. I do not believe that. I mean, he may have been hurt, but we talked about this before, or maybe it was right in the aftermath of the upset. But I feel like I heard somebody say it before, and I just kind of ignored it because I was like, well, Aldo knows how to low kick, and he knows his opponent doesn't block low kicks. He's gonna low kick, but that may be just a game that Jose Aldo has kind of abandoned. He just has not opened up with a lot of low kicks in many fights lately in the past couple of years.
Ricardo Lamas was the last guy that he really put a kicking clinic on.
Yeah, in 2014. In the 3 years since, he's mostly just been boxing with people. And doing that against Max Holloway, I think, exposes Aldo's fading gas tank as he gets older. Because to beat Max Holloway, and Aldo knows this, he has to go after him with power. And he has to go after him hard. And when Jose Aldo does that, he gets tired. He's always gotten tired when he really goes after somebody. It is just, you all go all the way back to his Mark Hominick fight. He can claim he was just playing possum to make the fight interesting all he wants. He's still I don't trust that. He's always been a fighter who's willing to just coast out late rounds, and I think it's mostly because he wants to fight at a very controlled pace and not tax his gas tank. And I don't think he can beat Max Holloway doing that. And I don't think he wants to play a low kick game to do that. And I don't think he is going to knock Max Holloway out. So I don't think he wins. He hurt Max Holloway a couple of times, but Max Holloway, he's never been knocked out. He's a tough dude to hurt and to make count. He fights well defensively. He knows how to recuperate and to regroup and adjust. And he gets stronger as the fight goes on. So I got to pick Max Holloway in a fight that may look a lot like the first one, with Aldo coming out, pouring even more offense on Holloway earlier, maybe even hurting him worse earlier, and then Holloway picking up and taking over as the fight goes on.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that, as much as it pains me to say, because I do love Jose Aldo. People who know me may know that about me, that I'm a huge Aldo mark. And I think really, like, there's a couple big differences between these two guys that, while obviously the first fight was not at all one-sided, and it has been a narrative that I think has kind of come out in the aftermath, that like, oh, Aldo got wrecked by Max Holloway, as if Aldo didn't have a very good first round and a very competitive second round.
Yeah, he hurt him solidly twice in round one.
Yeah, he had some very good shots in there and controlled the pace and the action very thoroughly, at least in the first round. But the way the fight played out does kind of feel like the way any fight between these two guys would play out. Just the fact that Aldo cannot match Holloway's pace, and he does not have Holloway's durability.
Yep.
So those two physical factors change a lot of how the fight has to be contested. It really puts a lot of pressure on Aldo, like you said, to make something happen early. And against a fighter like Max Holloway, that's a seriously risky gambit, because he's incredibly durable. He's very, both mentally as well as physically, very difficult to shake Max Holloway's confidence as well. And his pace just gets faster and faster as the fight goes on. He doesn't slow down. And the only way you could slow him down would be to chew up his legs, which I don't think Aldo can do. I'm gonna augment the reasons you laid out, but for me, like, it really comes down to Aldo being a very, very tactical thinker, a very thoughtful fighter, but one who can only think, I believe, in terms of tactics. Like, I don't think Aldo has ever learned to picture the fight as a whole while making his decisions in the cage. I think that's always why he's had Dede Pederneiras in the corner, to remind him of what he needs to do strategically, because in the moment, he's kind of an emotional fighter, Jose Aldo. Like, he's kind of, that's why he's such a good counter puncher too. Like, he's just kind of, he sees something, he responds to it, and he's very good at coming up with the right responses. But the why of strategy often eludes him. And so I think that's why he didn't kick Max Holloway in the first fight. I think it's why he hasn't kicked a lot of people, because as a champion, Aldo seemed to develop this mentality of, you know, that tactician's mindset turned him into a very sort of defensive fighter who would think, all right, well, they all know this about me. All right, all my opponents know so much about me, they're expecting this. Sometimes I think he's kind of psyched himself out, thinking like, I can't low kick because they know that's what I do, so I have to do this instead. And against Max, I think that's what he felt, because he hit Max with that one low kick, ate a hard right hand as a counter, and rather than thinking the way some other fighters might, the way Max Holloway would, okay, how else do I get to the low kick because I need it for the strategy? He thought tactically, he's seeing the low kick and countering it, do something else, which was a bad decision, because that's his one weapon that Max really can't compete with him on, and a weapon that has been shown to be effective against Max in past fights. But it's going to eventually become a Max Holloway paced fight. And Max Holloway is very good at identifying the moment when that turn is happening. He felt it happening near the end of the second round. He felt Aldo really trying to scare him off. And I think when Aldo came with that crazy spinning kick and then a big swing, and Holloway kind of taunted him and made fun of him, I think he knew that Aldo was trying to teach him a lesson, and the lesson was not received. Like, just knowing what Aldo's intent was allowed Holloway to overcome it, because he was still fine. He was still calm. He was still there, ready to keep fighting faster and faster, throwing more and more as the fight went on. Aldo was, he could tell, getting desperate to teach Max a lesson and stop him. And I just don't think anybody who exhibits that kind of desperation is ever going to have a great shot against a fighter like Max Holloway, who just does his thing, just keeps pushing along. And you combine the fact that he has a good strategic view of the fight with the fact that he's also a very good tactician in his own right, that he can pick up on openings and mix up his strikes exceptionally well. And he has, again, Jose Aldo's often gotten a lot of credit for being good in rematches because he gets a read in his opponents, but Max Holloway is probably that kind of fighter too. And Max Holloway took like 2.5 rounds to figure out that he needed to counter Aldo's counters in open space. What happens if he comes into the second fight knowing that already? That what he needs to do is make Aldo throw and then immediately try to hit him back with combinations. Can Aldo take those early shots? Is he quick enough on the defensive trigger to not get hit by them? I'm not confident in that anymore. So, yeah, I'm going with Max Holloway. I think the result will be fairly similar to last time. But boy, oh boy, Zane, am I hoping that Jose kicks his goddamn legs because I want to see it.
Yeah.
Please do it, Jose. Please find a way. Left liver shot, leg kick, okay? Do the Dutch shit. Set those kicks up and keep pushing it.
All right, odds on this fight. Holloway is the favorite, open at -270, fell steeply down to -306, and has stayed pretty consistent there now at -300. Aldo opened at +190, has risen up to +250, and is slowly falling back from that to +239. So makes sense for me for a fight we've already seen once before and that had a clear winner.
Yeah, I agree.
On that note, we're going to wrap things up here because it's already taken all of our time. And you can find me on Twitter at TheseAnytime. You can find Connor on Twitter at BoxingBush. It's BUSCH. You can find both of us over at BloodyElbow.com in our various roles. If you're watching this video over on YouTube, which you should be, give us a like. That's the thumbs up thing down there. That helps us a ton. And subscribe to our YouTube channel, MMANation.com, DOTCOM. That's where you get all the latest Bloody Elbow shows, videos, news, analysis, all that good stuff. We will be back next week for UFC on Fox. For UFC Fight Night Fresno, rather. Cub Swanson, Brian Ortega. A solid fight night card, so tune in for that. We'll have all your normal breakdown shows, videos, all that good stuff we do. So until then, see you all next time.